I'm still reeling from the 12-year Five Nights at Freddy's anniversary and all the announcements we got on that day. And although we've talked about the day itself, the restaurant, and what Security Breach 2 might have in store for us, there's still one announcement that I'm more shocked by than anything else that day. Because it turns out, we were right. Always bet on FNAF World 2. But what in the world could FNAF World 2 actually be about? Well, honestly, I think the poster that got teased by Megacat Studios tells us a lot more about the plot we're going to see than maybe even they intended. Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. So let's start by looking at the poster. On the FNAF anniversary at 4 PM, Megacat Studios posted this image with absolutely no caption, but the image says everything we need it to. Instantly, people clocked this, rightfully, as FNAF World 2. I mean, it took me about a second to realize myself. And if that's what this is, if Megacat Studios is making FNAF World 2, that's kind of everything we've been asking for. Look, Scott Cawthon, he can make a pretty damn good sit and survive game. But personally, I don't really think RPGs are in his wheelhouse. I love FNAF World. I think it's a janky, fun, silly adventure. But it'd be nice if it was like a good game, right? And Megacat Studios has earned a lot of favor with Into the Pit, so seeing them take on FNAF World seems like a match made in heaven. Have a different team more suited for an RPG make this game. Even Scott Cawthon himself readily admitted in his interview with Dawko that if he could change one thing, he'd go back and do FNAF World again with a full team behind it and really give it his best shot. FNAF World 2. But this poster is doing more than just telling us FNAF World 2 is here. Also, technically it's speculation, because like, you have to Photoshop anything to make sense of this, but like, guys, we'll get into it. What is the information on this poster? What is it telling us about FNAF World 2? And is it telling us that FNAF World 2 is here at all? First, what you can see before photoshopping the image. Obviously, the number 2, and this glitchy red overlay, somewhat reminiscent of Old Man Consequences and his lake in the deepest part of FNAF World. Now this is already evoking FNAF World with that Old Man Consequences reference, if that's what it is, but if you look past it, you can make out characters behind the effect. Characters that look a lot like the FNAF World style of Freddy's characters. Mainly of the main roster, Mangle, Balloon Boy, and the Marionette. Now, making out anything besides that without photoshopping is nearly impossible. So this is when we start to Photoshop the image and see what we can see. Now, I've got 2 versions of this image, one that I made myself and one that was sent to me. The first one I made on stream trying to make out the text at the bottom of this image, because if you couldn't tell from the base version, I don't blame you, but there is text at the bottom of this poster, and after messing with the color values, this is the best we could manage. Looking at it, you can make out the letters F, N, A, and R definitively. Some people say they see an F and an L here, but that's harder to tell. Regardless, even with F, N, A, R, this has the perfect spacing for FNAF World. So that to me is the nail in the coffin. I already thought this image looked like FNAF World, but the fact that the bottom probably says FNAF World is enough for me to just be on board. Now the other version of this image was actually sent in via Discord. I don't know what they did to this thing, but they photoshopped out the color values in a way where you can better see the characters behind it. It absolutely obliterated the text, but I wasn't going for that anyway. I got it over there. But again, we already could see this on the main poster. This is just giving us a better look at what's behind it. All of this nearly definitively tells us that Megacat Studios is developing FNAF World 2. And since we don't have a release date, probably coming out sometime in 2027. And is that it? I don't think so. If that was all the information I had about FNAF World 2, I wouldn't be making this video. But posters say a lot. The point of a poster is to give you a preview of the story you're about to watch. Or in this case, play. And if this truly is the key art for FNAF World 2 with some glitchy overlays on top, I think we generally have a pretty good idea on the exact plot of FNAF World 2. The overarching plot and the subplot. But what do I mean by the subplot? Welcome back everybody to the classic. Rye wanted to do a Gamersupps sponsorship, but it's 2 AM the night before this video goes live and I didn't have time to make one. So I'm just gonna be real. This channel is partnered with Gamersupps. I actually really enjoy their products. I drink it more than once a day because I'll drink their caffeine for lunch and then I'll have the non-caffeine flavors throughout the afternoon and evening. It's fully replaced my soda at this point. But Gamersupps makes powdered beverages that are caffeine and non-caffeine with some really good flavors. I've been absolutely adoring their strawberry lemonade and their gunpowder rush. It's their grape apple flavor. Those have been my go-tos every single day. And also they got some sick cups, like this brand new Sea Dog VA collab Pixel Cup. Let me put it this way. I'm spending my own money to get this cup because it's sick. They also have AFK flavors to assist in sleep and Gamer Aid to assist in hydration and creatine for you gym rats out there. If you use my code RyeToast, you get 10% off your entire order, and it directly supports me in this channel and helps me afford editors among YouTube's fluctuating ad rates. So thank you again to Gamersupps for the continued partnership, and thank you for using my code if you get some Gamersupps, because again, it directly helps me and it's super nice. As far as FNAF World 1 goes, there's two stories going on. The story of FNAF World, the game, is that something is going wrong in Fazbear Hills, and Freddy and friends need to go and fix whatever the issue is, ending up at the security system or Scott Cawthon depending on the difficulty. But that's the overlayer, that's the game you're playing. FNAF World pretty directly presents to you that there's something deeper going on. The first time you boot up the game, you're directly told this, and anytime you linger at a Fredbear text box long enough, the game reminds you. When you meet this glitchy version of Fredbear who tells you what's really going on, and if you follow its instructions to seek out the clocks, you end up recreating the access methods to the Happiest Day minigames. So even though the plot of FNAF World is saving Fazbear Hills, the story of FNAF World seems to be helping the crying child to find peace. At least that's what's happening if we're doing Happiest Day again. The overarching story and the understory. Now, just because this is how FNAF World 1 works, doesn't mean that FNAF World 2 has to do the same thing. In fact, there's absolutely no evidence yet, because there's no information about the game, that this is how FNAF World 2 is going to work. But like, for the sake of speculation, let's just pretend we know it's gonna be like that. like, okay, hey, we're working with a poster here. But if we assume that FNAF World 2 is gonna be somewhat like FNAF World 1, then we can play in the space. And I want to play. So the real trick to speculating what FNAF World 2 is going to be about isn't just figuring out the plot of the game, but what the understory of the game is going to be. What the real story underneath the game's layers is trying to say. And with this poster and some previous games, I genuinely think we have all the evidence we need to speculate exactly the plot and understory of FNAF World 2. Because while FNAF World 1 was helping the crying child to find peace, I think that FNAF World 2 is going to be helping Cassie be found at all. Look at this poster again. I've had some people contest me on this, but I promise you poster language is a real thing. This poster, like pretty much every goddamn movie poster in existence, is trying to tell us a little bit about the plot of the game with the way it's designed. Because we have our main 4 Five Nights at Freddy's characters, determination on their faces, huddled together and looking up to the challenge ahead. And what's up but Mangle, Balloon Boy, and the Marionette, larger than usual, larger than life, looming over the entire poster. Balloon Boy's the best example at this. He's leaned back, looking down, practically doing a villain laugh. In movie poster language, this is a classic way to distinguish your heroes from your villains for people who don't know what the movie's about. This poster is telling us that the narrative we're about to see is a group of heroes overcoming an overwhelming force, and the threat that we will be fighting are these animatronics, or at least led by them, or they're involved in the group of animatronics we have to fight. I mean, compare this to movie posters like this. Look, clearly we all know Darth Vader's a villain, and wouldn't you know, he's at the top of the poster, looming over the narrative, and our heroes are in the middle, ready to fight him. Guys, this is Media Literacy 101. I've had people tell me that this doesn't mean anything, because in the original FNAF World, they were stacked on top of each other, but Nightmare's not the villain. Guys, I'm begging you, guys, media literacy has never been worse. Posters are meaningfully designed. That was a celebration of everything FNAF. This is a meaningful narrative. It's not even like Balloon Boy, the Marionette, and Mangle being part of the villains in a weird circus thing is unprecedented for FNAF. It's not unprecedented for FNAF World. What was the final area, the big threat we had to face in FNAF World? Oh yeah, a circus! A place that all 3 of these guys would fit perfectly inside of. Balloon Boy especially, but the other two have a matching color scheme at least. And that's what I think the story of this game is going to be. The surface plot is going to be our cast of Freddy's characters, whoever we pick along the way, taking on the threat of this circus, this evil circus taking over Fazbear Hills. And we are going to have to try to put a stop to it. But that's just the top layer. I think we have enough evidence to confidently predict what the underside is going to be. And like I said, it's rescuing Cassie. Right now in the narrative, Cassie is in the most danger anyone's ever been in. By the end of Ruin, she's either at the bottom of an elevator shaft, locked herself inside of a room, one room away from the Mimic, or she's in Brazil. What I mean by that is in the third ending, codenamed Brazil. It's the ending you get when not listening to Gregory's instructions, instead seeking out a Fredbear cardboard cutout and putting on the mask one last time. When you do so, you're greeted with this happy scene, the hill we see from all the Security Breach endings, which, if this picture from Secret of the Mimic is to be believed, and this tree next to the house in Secret of the Mimic is to be believed, is the hill just outside the building she would need to escape. And on that hill is Gregory, Vanessa, and Helpy, beckoning her and letting her know everything's alright. Now, what this ending means can pretty easily be explained by the codename of the ending, Brazil, because it's not actually the country. It is more likely a reference to the 1985 science fiction film, Brazil, because the ending of that movie seems oddly pertinent here. The main character of it is strapped into a torture chair to get information out of him about some illegal terrorist thing. But just as they're about to torture him, his friends break down the door and get him out of that chair. And then it's just a mad chase through weird, twisting hallways and alleyways that don't quite make sense for the rest of the movie, until it cuts back to that same character, still strapped to that torture chair. He never made it out. All of that was just a delusion. The other characters in the scene say that he's been lost and give up on him. I think it's pretty clear that's what's happening here. Cassie, at the end of the line, trapped in this cave about to be killed by the Mimic, puts on the Vanny mask, and instead of accepting the reality around her, accepts this facade of escaping. This happy ending that isn't real. I've been saying since Ruin came out that I think the goal of the Vanny mask Cassie is using is to find a new host for the Vanny persona. And in this ending, when we put on the mask one last time, it finally takes over Cassie and replaces her mind with Vanny, just like Vanny did with Vanessa. And that's where this game comes in. Because when Vanessa was controlled by Vanny, her mind was locked away in Princess Quest. So now, if Cassie is controlled by Vanny, her mind would need somewhere to be locked up as well. And what else do we see in this ending cutscene? Balloons floating over the hill. And what's one other arcade machine in Security Breach that never really got a clean explanation? Balloon World. The one in the loft of the daycare, where if you follow its glitches, tells the player good night. I've been saying since Ruin came out that this ending implies that Cassie's mind gets trapped in a similar Balloon World-like arcade machine and that we're going to have to break her out of it. So how convenient is it that FNAF World 2 seems to be taking us to a villainous circus? Because the understory of FNAF World 2 is going to be breaking Cassie's mind out of the Vanny mask, just like we did for Vanessa in Princess Quest. In fact, this might be the lead-in to Security Breach 2. If this really is Scott's attempt to redo any regrets about Security Breach or FNAF World, one of those regrettable spots might be how Gregory's introduction was handled. In retrospect, now that the books have come out and more information about Gregory has come out, it seems pretty clear that the reason Gregory's so weird at the beginning of Security Breach is because he was working for Glitchtrap like Vanny right before the game started, and his being broken out of that is what begins Security Breach. Somebody or something let Gregory be free of Glitchtrap's hold on him, and he immediately took that freedom to try to take down the thing that captured him. But at the time of release, we had no way to know this. Maybe FNAF World 2 is the attempt to do the same thing with more context. Maybe in Security Breach 2, it begins with Cassie being freed of the hold Glitchtrap has on her. But the reason that happens is because of what happens in FNAF World 2 just before the game came out. Just like I suspect that Cassie freed Gregory by beating the Balloon World arcade machine, I think it's now Gregory's turn to return the favor. beating FNAF World 2, or whatever the actual in-universe game is, and freeing Cassie, so the two of them can take on Glitchtrap together. Eh? Look, I've speculated way more with way less before. This feels pretty cut and dry. Like, I feel really, really confident about this. Clip this a year from now when I'm wrong, but I think this is what FNAF World 2 is going to be. Have I convinced you? Do you disagree with me? Are you like one of my head mods that still doesn't believe this is FNAF World 2? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, if you missed my recap of the entire event, I cannot recommend enough this video right here. It talked about the restaurant, both games, and just the day in general. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share with the hashtag ToastArt. And a huge thank you to our generous patrons who help me continue doing this channel in light of YouTube's fluctuating ad rates. With a special thank you to our breadwinners of the week, Madison Esmond, Marks, Sam Pinnell, and Westward Meadowlark. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.